and welcome to that Eurovision podcast, Eurovision with a Slice of Life. My name is Rory, and I am doing really well today. I'm so happy because I have a job now. I'm so happy, and it's with a fantastic company as well. And I start in a couple of weeks' time, and it's proper journalism things that are going on here. And I'm just really looking forward to getting into this topic, really, just because it's a country that we have sort of spoken about in bits, but never really covered in ourselves. So joining me.
Jazzy, not been doing too much this week. I'm really excited to speak about this country because they've brought some potential news for 2022 and it's all very exciting. So very happy to be talking about this country.
It's Helen here. Wow, I can do that better.
No, what do you want about? That's the best. No.
We're keeping it. Cool. I've been pretty good this week. It's my first back to normal week in a while. I've had my family over here and we've had other family stuff going on. And finally, I've had like my normal work week back for the first time in a month. And I've also got some hopefully exciting work developments coming up soon. But I don't want to jinx it. Also knee deep in figure skating season and really excited for the Olympics coming up. And yeah, so I'm ready to get into this week's topic because this is also very, very exciting.
Oh, definitely, especially with the news that's come around this week as well. So in case you haven't guessed from the title of this podcast or anything, we are going to be, refocusing ourselves on countries yet again. And we are going to be talking about Montenegro. Montenegro is, fairly new to the competition, but after some tempered results, they pulled out of the 2020 contest for reasons that include nothing but money and hackney cabs, basically. And since then, they've managed to get their act together. They did miss out on the 2021 contest as well, unfortunately. However, they have announced that they will be returning to the competition in 2022. So that is fantastic. I think everyone here is pretty happy when we ever get some new artists and new countries that are coming back to join in on the fun and festivities, really. So definitely Montenegro is sort of, like I said, new to the competition. They've only participated in the contest as an independent country 11 times, and only twice actually reaching the final in 2014 and 2015, where 2015 was actually where they got their best results with Knez and Adio, meaning goodbye. I think they definitely stole that word from the Spanish, but what can we do? But yeah, it's a pretty interesting one. They've obviously also participated as part of Yugoslavia. And then of course the Serbia Montenegro as well. So yeah, just sort of kicking us off, I guess, what would be some of your favorite songs from Montenegro, either as an independent country or as part of Yugoslavia, if you know any of them, or as Serbia Montenegro as well?
So again, because I'm quite new to Eurovision by comparison, so I feel like this kind of fits well. I really only know Montenegro participating as an independent country. That being said, my kind of guilty pleasure, I guess, is actually their 2019 entry. I really love D-Moll and their song Heaven. I just thought they had 6 of them. I mean, it is kind of like your high school show choir going to Eurovision, quite literally. I think some of them were like 17. But they just had like a nice infectious energy about them. They were just so excited to be there. And I don't know, I am the person that has like Jump 5's version of Walking on Sunshine in my regular rotation. So like you could say that like the pop mixed groups kind of appeals to me, but I don't know. I just like it, especially after the revamp that came out. I think the national final version was a bit messy, but I think that because I think they were trying to give everybody their solo moment, but I think they edited it down quite nicely. Unfortunately didn't make the grand final, finishing 16th in the semi. 16 seems to be a bit of an unlucky number for Montenegro. I was looking at their record and didn't qualify in 2016, and then 2017, 18, and 19, they finished in 16th at their semi. So maybe we'll hope to get maybe something different than that. Otherwise, the one that I think everyone can kind of agree on is Slavko's Space. That was a moment in 2017. I think quite a few people were a bit shocked that it didn't qualify, but it's lived on. It's become a meme. I think we can all be grateful for that.
My favorite from Montenegro would be Who Sees Igranka. I think it's an absolute bop. I think it's so different to what you'd expect Montenegro to send. Like, 'cause I think people associate Montenegro with the like big Balkan ballad, quite classical, quite classy. But this was just so different to anything else that was in the 2013 contest. It had that rap element. It had that futuristic element. Sorry, I cannot pronounce that word. It was just so different, and it should have absolutely qualified. It came fourth in the tally vote, and juries downvoted this so much. Must have downvoted this so much because obviously we don't actually know the exact number of points that every country got from the jury in the tally vote in 2013 because we never got the split results. Boo.
I just had a look there and saw that the juries put Husi in 14th place from fourth in the televote as well. But like the disparity.
That is just so it just baffles me because it's so experimental and so different, but still really good quality at the same time. I do think we were going through an era with Eurovision where rapping itself was not being very much appreciated at Eurovision. Like either if it was getting to the final, it wasn't doing as well as say predicted. I think we saw this with Greece in 2011. A lot of people thought that would win in 2011. It didn't. I think it came like 8th. So rap was definitely going through a hard time in that period of Eurovision, but still should have qualified. Like that should have been in the final. It's definitely their best entry in my opinion. Others that I love would be Nez's Audio. I think it's just so atmospheric and fun and really works on the 2015 stage. Like it's a ballad, but like with the dancing, it still brings like kind of a party feel. I don't know how it does it, but it does. And I think it's one of those songs that the fandom really, really appreciates. And I can totally understand why. And I can understand why it's Montenegro's best result as well, because Nez is such a good performer and he sells that song really, really well. Another one that I personally find quite underrated would be Highway's The Real Thing. I think, yes, it's rock, yes, it's different, but it came 13th with the in the semi-final. So everybody thought when this first came out, oh, this will come dead last, this is really bad. But you can see why that wasn't the case. And it's nice to see Montenegro again doing something a little bit different, because I don't think rock is necessarily a genre they had tried before. And I think the staging of this was really, really good. And yeah, they got it spot on. Another one I just want to mention is, because it's in my top 5 for 2005, but they weren't competing as Montenegro at the time. They're competing as Serbia and Montenegro, and that is no name was Zuvici Muja. Sorry if you are Serbian or Montenegrin, I probably completely butchered that. Such a good song. Glad it came to, I think it did come, it came top 10, it came 7th, and technically is Montenegro's best result because they were Montenegrin, but they were competing as part of Serbia and Montenegro, so it's debatable, and it's definitely deserved to be Montenegro's best result in Eurovision.
It definitely is a good song, to be fair. And just in general, I think they were supposed to have gone again in 2006, but then with the whole controversy of that national selection in 2006, given the sort of independent sort of vibes that were going on between Serbia and Montenegro in 2006, the corruption and everything, pretty glad that just decided to park itself for a while, I think. So hopefully they'll come back again and they might be able to resurrect that maybe for Montenegro. Myself, okay, so I regularly fall in and out of love with Montenegro in terms of my favorite songs, because sometimes they hit the nail right on the head, and then sometimes they miss the mark completely. So my favorite sort of songs from Montenegro, I'd have to also say Knez, of course. I mean, it's fantastic. the fact that this was also written by Željko Joksimovic, who sang Lana Moja in 2004, hosted Eurovision in 2008, wrote Oro for Serbia in 2008, and then competed again in 2012. This was the only song that he's written for Eurovision that didn't make it inside the top 10, which was such a shame because it was really, really good. And they gave a fantastic performance, and it just worked really well with the stage. And Knez is just full of personality as well. He was lovely, lovely during the rehearsals week. I just remember watching all of his interviews, and it was absolutely fantastic. Another one that I think is a little bit underrated is Sergei Chetkovic's with Moj Svijet in 2014. Of course, this was the first time that Montenegro ever qualified for the final, so in itself is a momentous occasion. But I prefer this style of Balkan ballad as opposed to Adio, because it's a little bit more heartfelt. It's a bit more melodic, I feel. And in the actual performance as well, we had the skating as well, which is kind of interesting. It really kept you kind of focused, and it did give it a really nice sort of USP, really. And I have to also give two other shout outs. One to Andrea Demirovic with Just Get Out of My Life in 2009. It's absolute camp trash, but I'm here for it. And it's kind of also interesting that she would then go on to try and represent Montenegro again in 2019, and then be considered the fan favorite, and then all of a sudden DMOL just decided to come out of nowhere and then completely change it. I remember very vividly there was so many accusations of bribery and corruption and all these things. I don't know if any of that is true. I don't have a stance, but all I know is that Andrea Demirovic was coming back to try to get a character redeem arc, and it just didn't really work out well for her. And then I have to also give a little shout out to this one. If you've listened to our episode on our favorite non-qualifiers, this should come as no surprise, but this is 2012 Rambo Amadeus Euro Nero. I think it's so funny, but I love the sort of melting and the mixing of the ethnic kind of traditional sort of strings and the rhythms and the motifs and stuff with the really electronic beats and everything. And he's being highly satirical, basically. And it's great because Europe was going through financial turmoil at the time. Someone had to take the piss out of it, so it might as well just be Rambo Amadeus. But I personally really enjoy that. I know that I'm fairly in the majority. I can see Jazzy just being absolutely, no, how dare you, basically.
It's not a song. It's rambling. It's not a song. It's horrible.
Here's the thing, though.
If you it performs first in Eurovision 2012, and if you were watching for the first time semi-final 1 2012, you would not watch Eurovision ever again. No.
Fair.
I put with so much with Rory's opinions, and this is it. I've snapped now.
What, this is where you draw the line, is it? Like Triana Park. No, but I have to say, there's only one rule that you should all follow. Always stay cool like a swimming pool, right? It's a beautiful message. It's a beautiful one. But yeah, okay, so this is something that I really wanted to touch on. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but when it comes to Montenegro, Helen actually kind of pointed out something similar of it. They sort of kept finishing in sort of 16th position or so. However, when it comes to Montenegro, they seem to have a little bit of a thing of going first in a lot of things. So for example, they opened up semi-final 1 in 2008. They opened up semi-final 1 in 2009. They opened up semi-final 1 in 2012. They also have been first in the voting in 2007 and 2015. Do you think that there's some kind of conspiracy thing that's going on here? Or do you think that maybe it's just because that what they were doing at the time just really seemed to work well with what they were trying to go with? Or is it just complete randomness?
At what point did the running order start being specifically decided by the producers and not just randomly?
2013.
2013? Okay. So anything pre that is just that.
Yeah. It seems very strange,
At least they didn't get the dreaded number 2 slot that we know of.
That
They
is
did-
very true.
They did in 2019, didn't they? Can't
Oh,
remember.
they did, yeah.
Oh man,
Poor choices again.
protect my children.
But okay, so here's another thing as well. Obviously, we've had different styles of genre from what we've understood from our favorite sort of entries. We have a different, like the Montenegro have like experimented with different sorts of genres or things like that. So what do you think of their sort of strategy when it comes to producing songs and selecting songs? Do you think that they are happy to experiment now that they know what works for them? Because obviously the only times that they've qualified have been with Balkan ballads, really. Do you think that they want to keep just experimenting, or do you think that they don't want to be known as a country that just sends Balkan ballads?
I think there's a big issue with this, and the issue is that the songs that weren't Balkan ballads, some of them were actually good songs. They just didn't get the appreciation they deserve. But on the flip side, their Balkan ballads are really good, and they do a Balkan ballad really well. I think they could do a mixture of both, and it's not necessarily saying that when they're experimental they're bad. Like I've said, 2013 is probably their favorite entry of mine. It's a really difficult one, and maybe you stick with what is going to get you to the final. Maybe if you're just coming back, and maybe a Balkan ballad for 2022 would not be a bad idea. But then again, I think what people love about Montenegro is they are so different and they like to stand out. And it's just a really hard one to put your finger on, because I think that some of the non-qualifications they've had from their experimental stuff have been undeserved, and they should have been in the final for some of those. It's a debate that doesn't sit easy with me at all, because I want to see them make the final, but then again, I don't want them to stop being experimental, because I think when they've been experimental, have been their better entries. It's a difficult one, but their Balkan ballads are good. They're all, yeah. Sorry, it's just a debate that doesn't sit easy with me, because
Yeah, it's interesting with Montenegro because they've kind of gone back and forth almost every alternating year between internally selecting and doing a national final. And I think for the last 2 years that they've participated, they did do a national final. But I mean, what really has worked for them is the Balkan ballads. But at the same time, there has been at least one case in 2018 where sending a Balkan ballad, a full-on Balkan ballad, did not really work for them. Granted, it was worse than their qualifying entries, I will say that. And the choice of the blue plush tuxedo thing was a choice. But I do like when they go experimental. And I also know that, every broadcaster that's in the contest is different. Each broadcaster has different priorities. For some, Eurovision is the big thing. They will put all of their money into it. And for some broadcasters, they just need to be able to, kind of assess whether it's important or not, especially some of the smaller broadcasters. And I think Montenegro is one of the broadcasters that really has had to kind of, really assess how much, being in the contest is worth. Because obviously we would want to see them back. And, in a perfect world, every broadcaster would have all the resources to be able to, put on a great show. So in that sense, I'd say they have been at times very good at being resourceful, and at times, or at least disguising and working with what they have, so that it doesn't necessarily look like they're working with a smaller budget. But there are other times where it is painfully obvious that they are at a bit of a disadvantage there. And, though I was sad to see them kind of withdraw in 2020 and 2021, it's completely understandable, given their results, that there are other priorities at the network. They needed cars. That's kind of important. So I totally, respect them making that decision. But I guess that's been worked out. They have their cars now, so it's nice. It's nice to see them back. Again, we don't have any information on what they'll do to select their next act. Could be internal, could be a national final. I imagine it might be internal to maybe save a little bit of money, but I don't know. I've liked what they've brought more often than not. Again, I'm still trash for Slavko. That was a moment.
I think you're one of the very few people that I know that is all in love with Slavko, to be fair.
I think it's kind of ironic at this point, but like, I don't know. It was one of the 2017 was the first time I watched the semifinals, and I was kind of waiting for it to get like a bit weird. And that was when it got a bit weird.
The right time, wasn't it? It was perfect. It's also kind of crazy because obviously Slavko then went on to appear in the UK's X Factor that year as well. So that was very strange to see. But yeah, I have to say, like, I do love Montenegro's approach to Eurovision because they just don't play it safe. They take risks every year. And like I said, sort of in introducing this question, like I thought when you look at it, obviously a lot of the songs that do well from the ex-Yugoslav countries are ones that sort of are either hyperpop or Balkan ballad. And Montenegro has never really gone too far down the sort of hyperpop route, I guess you could say. I think the closest thing that would be to that would be maybe Just Get Out of My Life, or maybe at a push Igranka as well. But the majority of the time when they have gone for more Balkan ballads, obviously that's what's really paid off for them. But because they know what works for them, it shows that they want to sort of keep trying to do new things and bring in new genres, new artists, and people that we had no idea who existed really before. But they are fairly big names in Montenegro because, for example, Husi was like named the best Balkan act at the MTV EMA Awards in 2012, for example. Rambo Amadeus is really famous in Serbia, in a lot of the ex-Yugoslav countries. Sergei Chetkovic obviously is the same, Knez. And yeah, it's really interesting just to sort of see the constant gambling that's kind of going on within Montenegro. I must say, it does frustrate me a little bit when people don't necessarily understand Montenegro's sort of view, because they want to showcase different styles of them, and a lot of what this fandom tends to do, and I'm not calling anyone specifically out or anything, but a lot of the people in the fandom do like to pigeonhole. And of course, Montenegro, being a Yugoslav country, should only send Balkan ballads and stuff. But then if that was the case, we wouldn't get people like Husi, we wouldn't get people like Slavko, we would never get people like Andrea or Stephen Faddy or any of these sorts of things. And I think it's a really bold move for Montenegro to try and just carry on with this sort of sense of experimentation, and you could see that really interestingly in the national selections in the sort of last 2 years before they withdrew. For example, you had D-Mol, you had Andrea Demirovic again, who was sending pop / EDM, whatever it was. You also had Balkan ballads in there as well. You also had sort of generic pop, and then you obviously had High School Musical, and then yeah, so like it shows that there's a lot of culture and a lot of different styles that could really go for, really. But it's just whether or not they will play it safe now that they're coming back, because obviously now that they have the financial budget, they don't want to waste it, which kind of leads me on to sort of the next question, I guess. Would you like to see a national selection, or do you think that maybe sort of keeping it internal would be better, just for the sake of, keeping it cheap until we get to Turin, and then they can sort of start spending the money?
I'm in two minds again with this one, because I'm one of these, it's more national finals, the merrier. However, I completely understand why, if they would go for an internal selection, they're not one of the richest broadcasters in Eurovision, and they may want to like save all their money into like their staging or their production of their song to make sure that they have a really good song that does well, and like set up a stepping stone for like Eurovision years to come, so they can continue on a good trend, because they've not qualified many times, so it'd probably be nice to come back and get a qualification. So while I would be welcoming to a national final, I think the logistics would probably, like, logistically, it probably would be better to go internal and put all your money into like one act. But we've seen that sometimes doesn't pay off as well, and it can be a bit disastrous. But I don't know. I just think it's the first one back. They can really go for it, get a good act, get a good song, and put all the money that they have for this year's participation into their staging and the production of what they want on stage into Rin.
Yeah, as I kind of alluded to previously, I think this year, at the very least, their first year back, I think it would be wise to pool the funds that they have for this into one artist and one song, and to be able to not only put that and into putting on a great show in Turin, but also, like, I think kind of an unspoken really important aspect of being a Eurovision contestant is having a good narrative that goes with you, whether it's written about or not. I think there was, for the last decade or so, there was the narrative of like Italy's been robbed and whatever, and which made it so cathartic when they finally won. And then you saw it in like 2016, 2017, when Ukraine and Portugal respectively came back after a year off, and they came back swinging. I'm not going to say Montenegro is going to, win 2022, although that would be a nice surprise.
Podgorica 2023.
But I think really being able to kind of like, we've come away, we've reassessed, we're ready to go swinging. And then if they do get a very good result this year from that, I think then they could use that really good publicity and to possibly get a bit more backing from the broadcaster, and to then put on a national final. So I think it's just, taking it in maybe not necessarily baby steps, but like kind of thinking a bit more in the long term of what the plan is going to be.
Yeah, definitely. I think the main thing that Montenegro needs to do is let's not run before we can walk, essentially. We don't want them to start spending money drastically on sort of niceties and lots of superficial things that would end up basically hurting their chances. I think we kind of saw that a little bit when it came to maybe 2018, when it was just a bit, they were trying so hard in the music video, they were trying really hard to sort of prove to people that yes, we are improving in all of these things, and then it just fell flat on the night, really. So I think the best thing to do is just to spend the money wisely, definitely invest in an artist that definitely knows what they want to do, that's committed to their style, essentially. I know it's something that we keep hammering back on this podcast, but authenticity is really appreciated. And I think it would put Montenegro in good stead going forward. I don't think we're going to be expecting a fantastic performance or anything from Montenegro, which is terrible to say, obviously, because we don't even know any of the songs at this point. But statistically, Montenegro is fairly underrated compared to, or sort of overlooked compared to, its counterparts like in Albania and Macedonia and Greece and Serbia, etc. So it would take a while for the sort of streak to sort of start building up. But I do think it is possible that with enough time and with enough sort of support from the public, the broadcaster, the government potentially as well, because I know this because I interviewed a Montenegrin politician for my dissertation, and he said that people in Montenegro do love the contest. It just requires a lot of financial support that the government doesn't necessarily want to give out, because they have to spend it on other things, like trying to join the EU, for example. So once they have a little bit more support financially from all these other places, I think it could be really the beginning of a really beautiful story for Montenegro. And it's not like that what they've been sending isn't quality. Of course it is quality, if in different ways. It just so happens that they just tend to be underrated, or they just was a really strong year, for example. So I think definitely going forward, sort of keep it reserved for the first couple of years, internally select, focus a lot on the staging, a lot on the promo as well. And I think it'll be really, really kind of nice, I guess sort of another thing would be like, do you know any specific Montenegrin artists that you'd like to see come back? I know obviously it's a bit of a niche country to know a lot of sort of artists from, but would there be any that kind of spring to mind?
Here's what I would say. Getting back on the D-Mall train, not to bring the group back, obviously, but I feel like there's maybe one of those members, because there definitely were a couple that stood out amongst the rest of them that were better. And they were also, so young, very talented, but still, not very experienced in terms of performing. I'd love to see one of them kind of come back as a more mature and established artist and with a bit more confidence, and maybe come back as a solo artist.
I think that would be a good step, maybe, because they all did seem pretty young at Eurovision. I think they were like the youngest participants in 2019. So I think that could work if they gave them the right song, like that fit their voice, and they gave them a song that was a bit more modern, like a bit more 2022. So I can kind of see where Helen's coming from there, because it could like put them like almost in the modern era, because the members of D-Mall were pretty young from what I remember. Other acts I'd like to see back, for the lols, I'd love to see Slavko back with another banger. I don't think that will happen though. So
I just keep thinking back to the time when it was Eurovision Home Concerts and he was just singing Space with whatever those goddamn pogo stick things were on his feet. And it was just very scary. I was like, oh my God, he's going to put his foot through the floor or something.
I believe those were like moon boots or something.
Yeah, something really, a danger to health and safety. Let's just put it that way. But no, I think you bring up a good point about D-Mall. So obviously it was like they're all friends and they all went to the same music school together, as far as I can remember from their backstory. So that means that they were fairly young, but they were kind of supposed to be interested and very into the musical scene. But since then, one of the main people that I've been following on social media, for example, his name is Rizo Ferratovic. You will know him as the hot one in D-Mall. And he's since kind of started to blow up a bit because he's participating in some kind of national TV singing show. I think it's like All Together Now, but like a more Balkan version of it. And he seems to be doing pretty well on it. So that could in itself potentially be another potential sort of redemption era. And I think as well as that, another person who I'd love to see back is Nina Petkovic. Now, if you don't know her, she was in the national selection in 2018 and 2019. She gave pretty good songs. And I think this one in 2019 was a bit stronger than her one in 2018. But of course, when you like 2019's national selection was pretty high quality. So I'd like to see her kind of maybe come back as well and do something that's a little bit stronger. In terms of people who might have already come back, I mean, I'd love to see Andrea Demirovic again come back, would be fantastic. And also Vanya Radovanovic, who's 2018, because not purely for his musical talent, because he seemed very pained basically when he was on the stage in Lisbon, but mostly for the sake of his social media presence. Because if you followed him during the national selection in 2018, you would have known that he was very morbid with people, and he knew it within himself that he wasn't going to win. So he was just having a great time. So he was fully taking the piss out of himself, being like, oh, I just love it that I'm not going to qualify, and all of these things. And it was giving it was a kind of a thing that Elliot from Belgium would then carry on in 2019. And then I guess in a way, Samantha Tina kind of carried that on a little bit in 2021, not as much, of course, because she didn't realize that was how she sounded. But it just for the sake of the memes, I would really, really like that. But yeah, so just to sort of maybe wrap things up a little bit, what kind of advice would you give to RTCG, the national broadcaster, about changing Montenegro's fortunes and sort of getting them back into the final, really?
I think maybe go back at being a little bit more experimental, being a little bit more modern. Of course, the Balkan ballads do work if they're sung by artists that can actually sing them. No shade. But yeah, I think you have good stuff there. It's just not translating it on stage, which I think leans back to maybe going internal and saving the pennies for staging, because it's been a bit of an issue. Won't lie.
I mean, all the advice I would give them financial advice, mostly because like I am in the position where I'm kind of saving pennies at the moment. But in terms of artistic choices, again, like be experimental. But I do think something that was kind of missing from the 2021 contest, except for kind of Albania, was like, you know, a good Balkan ballad. And it's like, you don't have to, you know, if you do it this year, be a nice, you know, familiar thing to come back to, and then maybe be experimental. Just because you do it this year doesn't mean you have to do it every year, you know. Even the UK changed it up a little bit, but
Look how well that worked out, didn't it?
Bless. We haven't earned that right yet. But I do think my general feeling is I'm just happy to see them back. And I hope that they kind of have taken this time to kind of reassess and be refreshed and maybe not be so down on themselves. I hope that they see the fan reaction to them coming back and are, you know, really encouraged, because I think a lot of people have really been kind of missing them and encouraging them to come back. We had a great op-ed on our site, I think earlier this week or late last week, about trying to get as many you know, broadcasters to come back or debut at Eurovision. And you know, I do think it is a good thing to get as many people involved as well. I think, you know, if countries are worried about maybe not having as big of a budget, up until this year at least, I would have said, you know, look at, you know, San Marino, like they did have the funds to pay for Flow Rider this year, but they've just kind of been there having a great time. And I think the people have kind of fallen in love with them for it. So I'm so glad to see them back. I hope that they, you know, take that positive energy and bring it forward to 2022.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so nice to sort of have people like celebrating that Montenegro is coming back, because of course, I mean, I think it's always sad when we miss a country that's like used to be in the contest that isn't in it anymore. For example, you know, Slovakia, Bosnia, Turkey. I was going to say Morocco, but I don't think many people have that much of an emotional connection to Morocco, to be honest. So I think that we should be all right.
I mean, considering none of us were even born when they were in the contest.
Well, that's it, isn't it? If you were born in 1980, let us know if you have an emotional connection to Morocco's one entry to Eurovision.
Maybe before 1980.
Or before 1980, of course, if you were able to understand it.
Although since Eurovision again, I think they broadcast the year that they participated again, so maybe a bit more people have looked that up a bit. So that's nice.
Exactly. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I love Eurovision again for that, for bringing up so many new songs that people can enjoy. But yeah, I think going forward, I think, you know, be consistent for a while, I think, before experimenting and diverging. Be cost effective, because, you know, that's what you're here for. That's a problem that has been struggling with other broadcasters like Bosnia and Herzegovina, for example. That's the main reason why they're not even able to take part, because they just don't have the funds for the broadcasting. So definitely take what people say on board, learn from it, but still make sure that there's still some kind of element in there that is iconically or distinctively Montenegrin, because that's the kind of era that we're starting to go into now. Commerciality, but with a strong ethnic or a strong distinctive thing from the nation. For example, Shum, Voila, John's Tears, Måneskin, you know, like all of these people, they all, like the top 5 practically had something from their nation, other than Iceland, but we don't talk about that. So definitely take something from your culture, try to implement it into there, and it's going to be the start of something really, really fantastic, I think.
I was just about to say the Eurovision Museum in Husavik has opened up now.
Oh my God, I need to go. Can we do like a podcast episode from the museum? I think that would be totally worth it.
If we can afford to get to Iceland, yes.
Well, that's also true because it's not in Reykjavik either. You have to get a goddamn car and like drive around halfway around the country for it. So yeah, it'll be worth it. But yeah, do we sort of have any final points on Montenegro just before we sort of wrap this episode up?
Just welcome back, and we're glad to have you back.
Welcome home.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's nice that we had to have them again. I'm looking forward to having other countries come back potentially this year, like maybe Turkey. I think Armenia is supposed to be coming back as well. So, you know, this is going to be the year that everyone comes back. So I'm so ready for it.
We should get full participation list this month.
Maybe. I mean, at the time of recording, it was Monday, the 11th of October was the last day that that broadcasters could withdraw from the contest without facing a financial sanction. So it is a possibility we will get a full list of confirmed countries very soon.
I think the full publicly confirmed list, I think is up to 34 now. And some of the ones who haven't declared yet, like they always wait until the full list is announced. Like the UK is always just kind of with the full list. But
similar to Russia as well, I know, because I know Russia is because they changed the broadcasters, but we've spoken about that on our Russia episode. You can have a listen to it for that. But yeah, so in the meantime, that is the end of this episode of that Eurovision podcast. I'd really like to thank Helen and Jazzi for welcoming Montenegro back to the Eurovision family. I think they've been very missed, and I'm so looking forward to seeing what they're going to bring next year. And yeah, in the meantime, please do continue to follow us on all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at That Euro Site. We are also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, all of that stuff. So subscribe there because, you know, we upload our podcast episodes on there as well. We also have loads of new articles going up all the time on that eurovisionsite.com. So please just check us out there as well. So please support us, do as much as you possibly can because, you know, we're doing this all for you. You know, I hope you're enjoying the content we're giving you. Otherwise, this is also facetious. But no, I'm so looking forward to seeing what they're going to bring, and I'm ready. I'm just really ready. So yeah, so shall we all say goodbye?
Bye.
Bye.
I forgot we were. Oh my.